Hello, I'm Donovan Jacobs, your host, and this is Canada in Context. This channel is about talking and discussing about the issues around politics and race in Canada today. There are a number of ideas that have been put out by progressive left politicians and bureaucrats and activists, and really want to look very closely at the impact these ideas will have on the lives of daily Canadians and their freedoms. In the world today, there are a number of ideas. And primarily, they are found in three main areas: philosophies, politics, and policies. Now, a lot of the progressive left leadership in Canada and in the world, they put these ideas forward as being helpful. But the thing is, underneath, when you look beyond the surface, all these other reasons for being helpful policies and wanting to make things equal in the world, it's only a mask. And they wear the mask of globalization, political correctness, social justice, and climate change. So in this first episode of Canada in Context, what I want to introduce to you is the idea that will take away freedoms of many people around the world. And that idea is collectivism. It's been said there's no bad ideas. Well, I'd have to disagree with that. Collectivism has had a long history, and where in the last century millions of people were killed, dispossessed, and it's devastated every country that's ever been tried in. So the idea now that we are presented with in this day and age is that when we want to become a more fair society and produce more equal outcomes for everybody, that's the promise. But the problem is, in order to make good on that promise, governments have to centralize more control and power over its citizens. That is why I call collectivism the one idea that will destroy freedom forever. Because this idea will strip you of your ability to make a living. It will exclude you from society. It will ultimately lead to widespread misery and death, just as like it has in the former Soviet Union, in communist China, and other countries that have tried it. You see, what has allowed Canada and most of the free world to be so successful throughout history is the idea of liberalism. And this idea really has been foundational to unifying many diverse groups. And essentially what it is that belief that we will respect others' beliefs and opinions, even though we might necessarily hold them ourselves. But this has allowed us to get along with each other. The problem is that this idea is slowly being replaced by what is known as critical race theory. And as I mentioned earlier, critical race theory is being put out there under the disguise of social justice and political correctness. And what critical race theory does is that it frames liberalism as a colonial idea, as a white supremacist idea that needs to be rejected. But when you look at the effects of critical race theory and what impact it has on society thus far, it's been all negative. The moment Canada and other societies begin to walk away from liberalism, is the start of division between race and gender. So over the last couple of years, I've taken the time to really look at what critical race theory and collectivism is. Because it's being touted by a number of groups like Black Lives Matter, Antifa, many on the far left political spectrum. And we need to be wary of it, again, because it will really have a huge impact on the future of our country. So what I've seen over these last couple of years is that the left has begun to understand how they can weaponize capitalism to create greater dependency and to centralize more power and control under their authority. I'd like to spend some time on this idea of how misplaced dependency will ruin us. COVID has been a time where politicians like Trudeau see it as an opportunity, a test run as it were, to measure how far people will allow government control over their lives when their safety and livelihood are in the balance. I believe what Trudeau and the world politicians have figured out is that since they can't destroy capitalism, they figured again how to use it. And COVID has been a time where many have lost their jobs and the means to be able to provide for themselves and their families. And so what has the government done but step in with money, promising to get them through and to help survive this pandemic? But oddly enough, what has happened along with that is that the government has created greater dependency on itself, because without the support that it's provided and the promise of being able to weather the storm, families would go bankrupt, homes would be lost, and that in itself is horrific. It should never have happened. But that's another video. What I really want to focus in on is that when you create widespread dependency, you also create control over a wide populace. And I've written about this type of dependency in the past. In particular, how Canada has used economic systems and control to force compliance on First Nations. See, through the history of how Canada came to be, its government imposed a number of different sanctions and rules on First Nations. They destroyed their ability to hunt and fish and to be self-sufficient. And it's this approach and idea that the current Liberal government is beginning to really catch on to. There are a number of things that are being discussed in terms of vaccine passports and other regulations that give the illusion that they are trying to protect society as a whole. But really what these things will do in the end are undermine the daily freedoms of all Canadians. Obviously, there's more to discuss around these issues. And in the coming videos, I will discuss all these details at length. But for now, this is what I believe we need to be aware of. And that's why I've chosen it for that first topic. So I'll end with this. Let's learn a little bit more respect and allow people to have opinions that we don't necessarily like. But certainly, if the world and Canada embrace the idea of collectivism, it certainly will be the end